until he says his name, Toby, loud enough for the other slaves to hear. And if you've seen this scene in the film, he's hung by his wrist and beaten repeatedly, and after a few lashes with the whip, the slave master says, "What's your name?" And he says, "Kunta," and so they beat him some more. And he says, "What's your name?" And he says, "Kunta," so they beat him some more. And this goes over and over a few times until Kunta Kinte finally relents and says his name is Toby. And then the slave master says, "Speak up so everyone can hear the name I gave you." Right? And so then he says Toby really loud. And it's in this moment where you realize that Kunta Kinte's identity has been destroyed. And that identity is buried just like the one in Atwood's novel. Right? To inhabit the world as an existentialist is to learn to unname. Here I think we are poised to tackle the monstrosity that is the unnamed I. First in the guise of Gollum, and second in the figure of Frankenstein's monster. Gollum comes to us through Jewish folklore as well, where it is an animated anthropomorphic being that is magically created entirely from inanimate matter, usually identified as an amorphous or unformed material. This should resonate with you because it is literally how Adam came to be. Made from mud, fashioned to look in a particular way, and then was given life through the breath of life. Marilyn Cooper explains the golem motif as a highly mutable metaphor with seemingly limitless symbolism. It can be a victim or a villain, a Jew or a non-Jew, a man or a woman, or sometimes both. Over the centuries, it has been used to connote war, community, isolation, hope, and despair. Golems are created by a fusion of mutable substances and divinity, and are controlled by their naming. Golems, once created, are inscribed with a word. In one of the classic tellings, the word is Emet, the Hebrew word for truth, which can be altered by removing an aleph and rendering the word as death, whereupon the golem collapses into dust. In the most famous golem story, the Rabbi Judah Loew ben Bezalel, who used the golem to protect the Jewish communities of Prague from pogroms, forgot to immobilize the golem ahead of the Sabbath, and the monster spiraled out of control and went on a murderous rampage. Golems exist as narrative tales in many cultures, and the unifying theme of the golem is that it is created in the image of its creator. In this case, not the particular rabbi, but human fallibility. And so it cannot fail but be a disaster, even though the creation is one aimed at providing protection or doing good. And again, I think you can see the narrative parallel to Adam. Adam is created to be the steward of the Garden of Eden, but through his own failures, the garden is corrupted. Right? Which we've talked about before as indicative of the fact that maybe God creating in his own image creates a failure into Adam. Right? But we can talk about that in a minute. From the moment it is brought to life to the moment its existence is ended, the golem is the agent of another being's desire, and the golem is controlled by the words used to name that existence. What Adam was to God, what Adam became in relation to creation, is an act of control and domination enacted through the process of naming. A process that is literally alien to the human experience because Adam does not name himself. Compare the creation of Gollum as a being destined to be controlled with the monster that Dr. Frankenstein produces. The monster is an existence that cannot self-posit, which is to say that the monster is not capable of being in the world as a human because the monster is not able to think its own being. In Shelley's novel, the monster is identified as a creature, a monster, a demon, a wretch, an abortion, a fiend, and it. But at one point, speaking to Victor Frankenstein, the monster says, "I ought to be thy Adam, but I am rather the fallen angel." This is going to resonate with Prometheus, which is the subtitle of Frankenstein. Highlighting that the monster, to the extent it is able to understand its existence, is not able to think of itself as human. The internal struggle of the monster is captured nicely by the popular television series American Horror Story in Season 3, Coven. When the quasi-Frankenstein monster that features in that show struggles with its memories associated with its body parts harvested from his friends. The American Horror Story retelling is more in line with Shelley's because in Shelley's original work, Dr. Frankenstein discovers a previously unknown but elemental principle of life. And that insight allows him to develop a method to imbue vitality to inanimate matter. Though the exact nature of the process is left largely ambiguous, after a great deal of hesitation in exercising this power, Dr. Frankenstein spends 2 years painstakingly constructing the creature's proportionally large body, one anatomical feature at a time, from raw materials supplied by the dissecting room and the slaughterhouse, which he then brings to life using an unspecified process. In American Horror Story, it is magic that brings the cobbled together body to life, and in both cases, the monsters emerge from their monstrosity by taking complete ownership of their being. That is, by naming themselves, not in the superficial sense, but by becoming aware of their being as such. This then is the importance of otherness to the individual project of being as becoming. We are locked into an ontological cycle of domination that originates in our own misunderstanding of ourselves and manifests in the world as an act of aggression whereby our otherness is subsumed by an act of othering. Instead of thinking about ourselves as a piece of the world, as a singular example of creation, we think of the world as being less than, to derive individual value for our existence as an expression of ourself. Existentialism is an attempt to undo this process by working to know our individual being as an otherness prior to an external recognition of the others in the world that are not I. That is, we are all golems made from the same stuff. Thank you. Yeah, there you go.
Cool.
Here's like a handful of slides.